Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. And first we're going to start with Zaporizhzhia direction, with Dnipro and Zaporizhzhia, with this area, because probably the most important updates are coming from this territory. We haven't received, like say, the updates about the progress, about the Russian offensive, biggest offensive operation or something like this. The only thing we received during the previous night is that the Russians made a very powerful attacks and strikes against the city by the name of Dnipro. The sources report about significant number of explosions and so on, yet we haven't received even a single detail about the targets of the Russian forces, what the Russians were hitting, what the Russians were targeting, what was destroyed and so on. But based on just a simple logic, we can make a conclusion that during the previous night the Ukrainians tried to redeploy a significant number or continue redeploying process of significant number of forces from Orekhov, Zaporizhzhia area in direction of Avdiivka, of course, and Bakhmut. And for these purposes the Ukrainians were using the railways. This is the first way from Orekhov. The first railways were moving to, let's say, Zaporizhzhia, then to the north in direction of Silnikovo, and then from Silnikovo, the first batch of Ukrainian forces were redeployed to Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, and after that the forces were redeployed to Avdiivka, and the second batch obviously was moving to Pavlograd, then to Lazovo, then Barvenkovo, Slaviansk, and Kramatorsk, and then to Konstantinovka, with the purpose to reinforce the Ukrainian forces in the vicinity of Chasiv Yar. And we also had reports about the explosions in Dnipro and explosions in Slaviansk, Kramatorsk. So obviously the Russians were trying to hit and destroy as many as possible Ukrainian soldiers, as much as possible Ukrainian forces during their way from Orekhov, Zaporizhzhia area in direction of the line of combat contact, the most, let's say, fierce battles. Furthermore, during the previous days the Russians were trying to slow down the Ukrainians to attack them. We have updates and reports during the previous days about the Russian progress on the northwestern flank of Robotyne, and today the 65th Mechanized Brigade published the video of another Russian attack that took place somewhere in February. They are not providing us the dates, so as I understand, Zaporizhzhia area will repeat the same story as the situation in Ivanivske tactical bridgehead, when the most of the forces were redeployed from this territory, and the main base of defense in Ivanivske tactical bridgehead was put on shoulders of 58th motorized brigade. As I understand, the same story will repeat the 65th mechanized brigade, that is going to be the base of defense for Robotyne. So the Russians were attacking, and on this video we see how the Russian infantry landed in the northwestern part of Robotyne. The Ukrainians managed to discover them and start bombing them and shelling with significant number of artillery rounds, cluster rounds, and so on. That was reconnaissance operation. That attack, the attacks that took place during the previous few days in direction of Robotyne, had few main purposes. The first one is to understand whether the Ukrainians have already redeployed and start the redeployment process of the reserves and forces to Avdiivka and Kramatorsk, and the second purpose was to slow down and not to allow the Ukrainians to do this. So this is the situation in Zaporizhzhia area, and once again, very likely the Ukrainians continue redeployment process. Very likely some of the forces were destroyed during the, let's say, redeployment process, but most of them probably were redeployed to Avdiivka direction. When talking about Avdiivka itself, we stopped receiving any updates from the central part. The Russian sources reported, of course, about further offensive operation in direction of the industrial Ave, but for now the Russians haven't managed to cut this territory. The Russians continue reports about direction of the railways, in direction of the railway station, in the vicinity of Timiryazeva Street and so on, but yet no geolocated proofs, no progress on the ground. So as we can see, the Ukrainians managed to redeploy the reserves they need, and more or less they managed to stabilize. This stabilization is not going to last for a very long time, because this is the meat grinder, that the same as used to be in Bakhmut, and anyway sooner or later the Ukrainians will lose their reserves, because they have a lot of problems with supply and support. The only thing that can, let's say, that currently works and plays in Ukrainian favor is that during the previous months and years they managed to bring significant number of ammo, rounds, everything necessary for very long clashes inside, so there is less need to bring munition to the city, because there are a lot of warehouses inside on the chemical plant in the 9th quarter. So the Ukrainians don't have problems with bullets, with rounds, with grenades, with equipment and so on. The only problem they have is with wounded soldiers and fresh forces that they still need to bring using the field. During the previous night, we got during the previous days, we got the first lot of videos from the 9th quarter. And the Russians continue bombing and attacking this block. This is the main stronghold. There are two strongholds, the main strongholds in this area, the chemical plant in the 9th quarter. The Russians currently are not attacking the chemical plant. They try to bypass this area from the south to avoid clashes in this area, but obviously the Russians don't have the same possibilities to avoid the clashes for the 9th quarter. Obviously, this is as must operation, and the main reason of this as must is because of this is the base of defense of Ukrainian forces in the former air defense base that currently is encircled and appeared in the cauldron, and we are talking about this territory. During the previous night, we got more details, more updates about further Russian attempts to attack in direction of the former air defense base. Once again, the Russians managed to establish control over the tree lines in the forest between Sherbakova Street and Vinogradniki area, and some sources are saying that the Russians entered this area, Vinogradniki area as well. Furthermore, but we still haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of that. So this is the situation in Avdiivka, and another important thing that I would like to discuss with you about Avdiivka is that we received very interesting footage and very interesting information. So what can you see on this photo? This photo was published by the Russian sources, and this video photo you can see too, let's say, a group of Russian soldiers, but take a look, pay attention at the back of these soldiers that is located in the center, this one. This is like a personal, let's say, personal electronic warfare equipment. The Russians are saying that this guy was interviewed. He shared with the author of this post his opinion, and he reported that currently the Russians start using and massive production of the personal electronic warfare equipment. And the soldiers are saying that when they were attacking in Avdiivka, Ukrainians start bombing the Russians with significant number of FPV drones. And he's saying that most of the drones that came down within a distance of from 100 to 150 meters. So that was also the reason, one of the reasons why the Russians were so successful in conducting offensive operation in the central part of Avdiivka. And furthermore, just I would like to point your attention that there are very heavy clashes in the central part, but either we still haven't received even a single video from the Ukrainian side of FPV drone bombing of the Russians in the central part of Avdiivka, which more or less probably confirms the theory that the Russians start using personal FPV drone electronic warfare equipment. Let's say one squad, one group in 20 soldiers. They're gonna need just 2 or 3 soldiers to have this equipment, and you can save the lives of the entire group, and you can improve your positions. And that was also a fact of something unexpected from the Ukrainian side. Now we are moving to the south in direction of Novomykhailivka. The Russians continue storming Pobeda area. Today, during the previous night, the Russians published another additional video of bombing and attackings in direction of Pobeda itself. If you remember, just a day ago, we were talking about the Russian progress along the tree line that located on the east of Pobeda, and we have adjusted the map. We're talking about this territory. And now, very fast, let's say the day after the Russians established control over the tree line, they start publishing the videos of artillery bombing of Pobeda itself, to be more precise, not the, let's say, the residential area, but the farms that located on the eastern part of the village, which confirms that very soon the Russians will make the first or maybe another attempt to assault this territory with the purpose to capture this area. So we expect within the next 48 hours additional updates from the Russian side of further progress in direction of this small part of the village by the name of Pobeda. When talking about Novomykhailivka, we haven't received anything from this territory. Now we are moving to Bakhmut Artyomov's direction, where we have also a lot of very interesting details and updates. The situation between Popovo Forest and Bogdanovka hasn't been changed during the previous 24 hours. We still haven't received any geolocated confirmation of Russian control over the 2 strongholds on defense belt between New Cemetery and Bogdanovka itself. Furthermore, we continue receiving videos of FPV drone bombing of Ukrainian forces along the railways between these 2 strongholds, which is more or less a valuable, let's say, reliable confirmation that probably and very likely some part of these 2 strongholds are still under Ukrainian control. So this we are talking at least particular about these territories. So once again, I'm saying that because of the FPV dronings in this area, very likely that this stronghold and some part of this stronghold still under Ukrainian control. we'll see what is going to be next. Furthermore, a very important thing we received from this territory, the Russians, as a result, because of the fact that they managed to enter probably very likely the Popovo forest, they moved their FPV drone focus also further to the west. On this video, and this is probably the first video since the beginning of battle for Chasiv Yar, when the Russians start bombing and attacking these three lines with FPV drones. So the Russians, as you can see, are moving focus further and further to the west. Of course, the Ukrainians try to counterattack, and they try also to publish some videos. On this video, for example, we can see the FPV drone strikes of 42nd Mechanized Brigade. This is the 42nd Mechanized Brigade located in the vicinity of Popovo Forest, and these drones of that brigade were attacking the Russian reinforcements and infantry that were heading to Popovo Forest. So this is the situation in this area. Furthermore, additional mappers, including Deep State pro-Ukrainian map and neutral mapper Syriac, confirms the further Russian progress to the south. And according to them, according to these reliable sources, the Russians managed to establish complete control over these territories. So this is the control on the north of Ivanivske. We haven't received any geolocated confirmations once again, but if you ask my opinion, I believe that this is the real progress. I'm just following some rules on this map, on the military summary map. But if I had this possibility, of course, I would adjust and color this territory either. But I'm waiting for geolocations, you know me. So this is probably very likely the progress of the Russians, and we continue receiving more and more videos of Russian offensive operation attempts to attack Ivanivske by Kamerton Akhmat special forces from Bakhmut itself. On this video we can see the convoy of Russian tanks and personnel carriers and the support of tanks that were heading in direction of Ivanivske. Very likely the tanks and personnel carriers managed to land the infantry, and then they start, let's say, moving back inside of Bakhmut. So let's say that was the first, maybe the second or third attempt to attack. The Russian infantry reached probably this area. On this line they turned back and start moving back to Bakhmut, let's say this. So basically the clashes when talking about Ivanivske from the southern direction still take place somewhere in this area. The Russians still haven't managed to bypass this line. The Ukrainians have a very big stronghold, very big powerful defense belt, and very likely the Russians are waiting and expecting the Russian approach and movements from the northern direction. So this is the situation for Bakhmut-Artyomovsk area. We continue receiving lots of updates, lots of very interesting details about the mobilization process and the total situation in Ukraine. We received additional few videos about the mobilization. For example, on this video we can see how one person was encircled by the Ukrainian commissars. They encircled him, start talking with him. So just give us the documents, nothing special. We will check your identity and that's it, no problem. Man was talking about the rights in Ukraine, about the constitutional law, that they don't have right to do this. We don't have war, we don't have mobilization total. What are you doing? Think of your heads, don't, let's say, ruin your lives or something like this. At some point he tried to run away, but he was captured by these guys, and then he probably was sent somewhere to Avdiivka or maybe to Bakhmut direction. A little bit at the same area, somewhere in Lvov, we see another situation when the commissars and the punishers of Ukrainian mobilization system captured another person and arrested him, and also very likely sent him somewhere in Avdiivka. I'll repeat to you that we're going to receive more and more updates of the same type during the next days, and this is very risky, of course. Today we got another important thing from some of the heads of Ukrainian battalions, Volky Da Vinci of 67th Mechanized Brigade, and for example today he reported that regarding the situation, even if the Ukrainians, regarding the fact that maybe if Ukraine is not able to mobilize 500,000 anyway to hold the positions and to stand on current positions, or at least to move back very slowly, the Ukrainians need to mobilize additional at least 250,000 soldiers. Meanwhile, the Western countries reduced the level of support and level of everything. The Ukrainians try to fight with Russians one by one. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you, we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, share my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.